Hi.
Claire Fountain is in the house today. This is exactly where you need to come for credible life advice. You ask the questions, and we're going to answer them. So I've been following your account for, I'd say probably the last 2 years.
Really? Thank you.
Yeah. Do you know how this happened? So I had an audio editor, and I was like totally resistant to Instagram and getting on social media.
Yeah.
This was out in Connecticut. He knew of you. His name's Daniel, and he was like, "There's this
Daniel.
woman I know."
Shout
Hi,
out,
Daniel.
shout out Daniel.
Daniel like helped me start this whole thing here, and so he was like, "You have to follow this woman who doesn't have a traditional yoga body."
Yeah.
And she's on Instagram. And she's really awesome, and she'll like give you ideas on how to do this. And so I've watched your feed progress over the last 2 years, and it's radically changed in some ways.
Yeah.
So
I barely post yoga.
you barely post yoga.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason behind that. Like, it's purposeful.
So talk to me about it.
Well, I mean, it has.
So you have to understand she's an influencer, and she has courses. So CB Quality is your Instagram name. Let's get this straight from the beginning.
Okay.
So, and then you have a website, which is Built and Bendy.
Yeah, I mean, that was the name of the ebooks. I did a whole strength training and yoga series called Built and Bendy because we're strong, and then we're bendy, which is flexible.
Right.
So catchy.
Right. Well, in Built, like, I also like the idea of, like, my dad always said, like, you're well built. Like, whatever that, which meant, like, i.e. you're not, like, a skinny chick.
No.
Right? So I loved that. Like, you actually have a body, which is not normally what we see in the yogic world.
No.
Okay, so go ahead. So you don't really post yoga anymore.
No.
What's the intention behind that?
It's changed. It was never just about yoga. Like, I got into yoga for mental health issues back in high school. So I started yoga when I was like 15 or 16 years old. And it was about the mental health component. It wasn't because it was trendy. It wasn't because I wanted a new workout. It wasn't about any of that. It was about trying to fix like the mental stuff that was going on with me.
Can you share
like,
what was going on?
Like depression.
Like, sorry,
am I talking in the right?
No, you are.
How close do I need to get?
You totally are.
No, I had like depression and anxiety, and I had like a totally life-threatening eating disorder in high school.
You know what? One of my questions was about eating disorder.
Yeah, we can talk about it. It's the one thing I never really spoke about, which is so interesting because I think
haven't really spoken about much.
I mean, I have now. I've written a lot about it, and I've done like some, Twitter takeovers. What are they called when you do like the tweet takeovers and there's questions? I'm not really sure what it's called, but I've done some of those.
I suck at Twitter. I'm horrible.
I kind of like Twitter though. That's a whole other.
We'll move into Twitter in a minute.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I've done more speaking about it because I thought, you know what, it's worth like the telling the story is worth talking about because I think there's a lot of misinformation in the space of eating disorders, and we think that if we just post pictures of all bodies, girls won't get eating disorders, and that is a massive lie. Eating disorders are caused by so many other factors that really have I'm not going to say nothing to do with advertising, but that's not why people are getting eating disorders.
Right.
It's like a whole other depth of like why, and like self-worth issues, and like feeling like you don't have control or autonomy or like any agency. Whatever, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But moving back to why I stopped posting yoga was even the concept of Instagram yoga, like being on the first wave, because I built this whole following back in 2013. Crazy. Before there was, Fitfluencers and Instagram
you built it
yoga.
all on Instagram.
Yeah.
Really? Like you were one of the first people who like downloaded Instagram. You're like, look at this.
Yeah. It like just blew up, and I never planned for it to blow up. This is not, people now want to read ebooks about how to build a following. Like, it was never my intention or my plan. It just organically exploded because of, like you were saying earlier, I don't have a stereotypical like yoga body, and I don't really subscribe to a lot of the very westernized ways of yoga, right? It's just only one person, one style, one shape, one vibe. That it just wasn't. I felt like that's not accessible. Like, the people who probably need yoga the most don't even think it's available to them to practice, and if they do, they don't, and they don't feel comfortable if they do. Think
Anybody who's heavy doesn't want to go into yoga.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Generally speaking, not to say you're heavy, but
no,
heavier people.
Yeah.
Don't want to go. I mean, with the patients I've worked with, they're like, no way am I going to yoga class. The clothing, everything about it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's targeted towards like a very privileged, a very one race kind of vibe, and that's not good, because yoga is for everybody, and mental health awareness is for everybody, and wellness is for everybody. So that was really the main thing behind even posting yoga to begin with. Was I thought, you know what? I think this is beautiful. I think a lot of the pictures are artistic. I'm very into like creativity and like from the art standpoint. And I thought, you know what? I'll share my practice. Why not? And then it just blew up from there. But that same thing that I think made it blow up is what I have begun, I'm not going to say rebelling against, but I was tired of doing what's expected of me in a sense.
Well, you're evolving too.
Yeah. Well, it was more so like I realized for so long I wanted to believe that you could have a body and be attractive and look a certain way and still be valued for how smart you were as a woman. And I'm not going to say you just can't, but from a public standpoint, you just can't.
Okay,
and
wait, so this is huge. So besides like the eating disorder question I had for you, this was like the other, we'll make a note. I'm going to write eating disorder.
Fun topic.
Because I think girls and women need to hear this conversation. But I'm dying from a personal standpoint, because I hit the Instagram game much later, and I'm older than you. I'm like significantly probably.
No.
42, girl.
I'm like 33.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm a decade.
A baby.
I'm a decade.
Yeah. But
I have 3 kids, right?
I wish.
I know.
I won't get to the baby game soon enough.
Oh, God.
Soon enough.
So for me, I resisted it consciously.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to do Instagram, and it wasn't until people who follow me know this story. I was with a publisher, 3 publishers, and they were like, where's your social media following? And I said to them, like, as a psychotherapist, I don't want to be on these platforms all the time. Yeah. I need to connect with my kids. I'm a single mom. Yeah. And they were like, that's so sweet.
Sweet. Yeah, get that profile.
When you get your stuff together, like, you can come back to us. Yeah. And so I started. And it doesn't mean I wasn't watching other people. I just didn't feel comfortable sharing my life, and I just didn't have. I didn't feel like I had the time that I wanted to dedicate to this. So I wanted to talk to you about this, because as I've sort of developed, like, whatever my brand is on Instagram, it's been incredibly awkward for me. Yeah. And I can't decide whether or not some of the stuff I post, really smart women are like, ooh, bad call. Like, you constantly feeling this critic on your shoulder.
I totally
Am I ruining my career by doing a post? Because as you guys know, like, I do conservative television, even though I'm not. I'm the like the progressive face of some conservative television shows that I do. But I don't just do Fox. I've done CNN, CNBC, all these things. So if I post a half-naked picture of myself in a bikini, right, on the beach, is that sort of ruining my reputation? But then I feel such a sense of freedom when you get to this place where, like, you can't be criticizing yourself every single time you post. It will just freeze you. The paralysis is incredible. So then I'm like, F it. I'm just going to post whatever I'm going to post, and I'm not going to care what other people think. And frankly, it's none of my business what they think of me. Yeah. But with that being said, you worry about credibility, and I worry about certain feminists in this space who are like, I wouldn't go on her show because she posted a picture of herself basically half naked.
Yeah, but then you also have the feminists who say it's your body. You're in charge of your body when you have control of your body and ownership of it.
And you're empowering women to feel like free with their body as well.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like we're in a double bind all the time.
No, constantly. You can't win one way and you can't win the other. It is the most frustrating thing for me, because I came from a very liberal, like, European idea of body, right? Like, they're just bodies.
Even though you're from the South.
Yeah, I'm from the South.
Wait, you're from Mississippi?
Yeah, of all places.
Where in Mississippi?
I'm from Jackson.
So cool.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting.
So cool. Okay,
it's interesting.
Yeah,
we'll say that much.
I have a real Southern girl in me.
Really good.
Yeah, I'm like the New England girl who's like dying to actually like live in the South, and I've done road trips by myself through the deep South.
Yeah, we're very sweet, most of us.
So sweet.
We're sweet people.
So sweet. So wait, so this is, you grew up in a, like, that's pretty interesting in Jackson, right?
Actually, no, I was like the weird kid. Like, I worked at a co-op. I was a vegetarian when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and because I was doing yoga, people thought I like worshiped the devil. So like, we're in the Bible Belt.
So you're already like, I'm already an outsider.
They're like, she's such a weirdo, and I was like pro-choice in Mississippi, so I would get like ostracized during high school conversations because I like.
Did you go to a big public high school?
No, I went to a private school, a really snotty private school.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, it's a whole other level.
Wait, was that just your family, the way you were raised, or was it just you?
You
just came out like kind of a rebel?
Yeah, kind of a rebel, but I'm from a family of like thinkers and like really smart people. So this actually ties into everything we're talking about, like the body and the eating disorder, the liberal mindset, and academia, right? So I came from a really like
you're super effing smart. Like I read your posts,
you.
so I wasn't. I mean, not that I give all this credibility to the schools that we go to, but when I, you know, ended up reading your profile, I'm like, she went to Vassar. Like, this girl's worked her tail off.
And I'm finishing my master's now.
Where are you getting your master's?
At Wake Forest.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, and I may actually push for a doctorate somewhere because like this actually ties into this whole thing about not being able to be taken seriously, but the decisions you may make with your body or the images you take or what you know, being free and enjoying, which goes back to like this eating disorder. Like I fought so hard to not hate my body. The fact I was able to exist in it in a way where I was like, fuck opinions, I can do what I want, it's just a body, you know, my worth is internal, my validation is internal, I don't find validation externally, and to think like it's just a body. But then you forget that's like living in a way where that's how I want the world to be, but how the world actually is
something different.
The guy I'm dating is going to say that you stole that saying from me. And I did. I'll credit him on this one about how we want the world to be versus how the world actually is. And how the world is that there's still a stigma. There's still a stereotype. It's still the fear of like, will people not want to, you know, hire me? Or will they not want to read my stuff because they think, oh, well, she wore that. She can't possibly also be smart. And I've had people say that. Like, it's why I've kept a lot of my celebrity clients private and I never posted it, because the minute you're involved with them, and I recently had an experience, like it's still happening, where I filmed something in like the sports realm, and every comment under that video was hi, every comment was about him having sex with me. Every one of them, because I'm just a body. Women are just objects to be used, and it's like.
Wait, say that one more time. Yeah, what was that?
It was a video within like yoga for like in sports, which was cool. I thought it was cool.
And a guy said
no, he didn't say anything. It's the comments. It's people's reaction to it, right?
No, and I've heard you actually say before, you know, this isn't a safe space. Like I'm not going to get. No. There's certain platforms you don't like to go on because you're like, that's no longer a safe space for me.
Yeah, or they're just things like I can't, like even live right now is like, y'all know what I'm talking about. I had to form I have a private women's page, which is like untouchable by advertising, untouchable by anything, but it is so nice. And even the feedback I get from women of like, we have a space now where like you can demo a yoga like pose, or you can talk about, you know, engaging this muscle, or go through actual legitimate like fitness workout yoga based things, and no one's making obscene comments.
Is this on Facebook that you have the private page?
Oh no, this is on Instagram.
Oh, I see.
It's the CB Quality Training page. Ladies, get at me. Go follow.
We
talk about fun lady things.
It's totally private, and I have to like ask to join. You have to be
and
like,
I have to like weed through.
Yeah,
and if I can tell like, you're a lady, I'll keep you. But if not, then it's like.
So you would post, let's say the word is like provocative, right? So you posted more provocative stuff at the beginning. Do you feel like you've gone less provocative now?
Yeah, but I mean intentionally so.
Because you felt like you're not being taken seriously.
Yeah, but it also started feeling disingenuous. Because it's like, this doesn't feel like, you know, like when you're young and in your 20s, like you're kind of rebellious in a way, and you wear shorter this, or you wear a little tighter that. And it just started not feeling like me anymore. Like it's just, this is not, and it felt, oh man, it's terrible to say this because so much of it was built on this, but it started to feel really gimmicky, you know, like hot girl does yoga. And it's like, that's not what I want to be known as. Like you were saying, I went to Vassar, I came from an academic family, like they didn't even understand what I did for a long time, but I come from a place of like, what you know, and like that's your value. Like women who just ride on their appearance, like that was something I was brought up not to like admire, right? Like that was kind of the cheap, easy way out for women. And even if you were using kind of your like feminine charms to get things, was also looked down on. So I didn't come up in a place where I thought like being pretty was the end all be all. It was almost looked down on a bit, where it's like, ugh, that's all she values.
Which is, so this is again, this puts us in this like double bind all the time, because that attractiveness, what you brought to the table, opens up a lot of doors for you as well. And so you know it. So like at times, like you could use a post to leverage that celebrity. Right. So we can't like completely divorce ourselves from this either.
It's wild. It's what, like we were saying earlier, it's like a catch-22. Like you can't, not to say you can't win either way. Like I think there's a way to do it, but it also feels like, well, sometimes when I don't post certain things, I'm like, did they win? Like, did I let them win?
I know.
Because I'm letting, like, the societal messages about what women should and shouldn't do and how they should and shouldn't look, you know, dictate that. But I also think there's an authenticity in saying, it's growth. Like I'm evolving, so my image has to evolve, and that feels honest to me.
Well,
The thing,
and
it just
there's also
doesn't feel honest anymore. You
well,
know?
and there could also be on like days where you are sitting in Bermuda or wherever you are, and you're like willing to post a bikini picture just because like it feels good, and like that's the moment that you're in, and it's spontaneous.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting because, well, for me, as a psychotherapist, raised.
That's what I'm doing my master's in.
I know, right?
Yeah,
we're going to talk about that. That's why I said, like, if you have any questions for me. But as a psychotherapist, and I've moved away from doing private practice because at some point I had to pass the baton and say, like, okay, I have a lot of stuff to teach, which is also like a very weird space that I'm in right now as well in terms of my own personal growth, because I meet so many people who are so willing to give advice. And it's not that they're not credible. They don't have to have the education or the experience I've had, but I'm actually quite reluctant to give. Like, we're not, psychotherapists aren't advice givers.
No.
Right? Like, that's not what we do. But, like, so much of, like, what other people's platforms are, and that's why I love your page and how it's evolving, is because you have this really delicate way of giving advice without it being sort of like this, I don't know, like, annoying inspirational speaker kind of.
Man, I am so anti that, but I'm anti a lot of things.
I know.
But I really don't get down with the whole like, you can do it. We all have insecurities. Look at me being insecure. Let me post my like contrived roles, and it's like, if you don't know what a body looks like that's not photoshopped as an adult, then we have bigger problems.
Right.
Like that's something you should come to without social media.
Yes. Well, and you, I don't know, there's just like a serious authenticity and intelligence to the way that you've done it, which is quite awkward for a psychotherapist who's been trained to not make her life public at all, right? You're like supposed to be a fly on the wall, essentially, unless you're into relational therapy, which I am. I always was. I always worked that way, although we didn't call it relational therapy back in the day. That was like, I had to like find my tribe out there after I graduated. But, as I said, like, okay, I have to like constantly shed the expectations that are on me. Like, you're a psychotherapist. Do you really think you should post that? And it's like, yeah, actually, I kind of want to live. And I didn't know when I got this degree that I was like signing with like my blood. Like, okay, you have to behave in this certain way in society, else everyone's going to feel uncomfortable around you. That was never the deal, right? You're doing a vocation that it's like ministry. But I didn't feel like I was signing my life away to this state to be a social worker. I didn't want to feel that way, and I was starting to feel really constricted by it. I have a lot of problems with like the mental health and the therapy space, even being in it now and going into it more seriously. So I have this running document in my notes that's like how I therapy, and it's like going to be a very like nuanced, you know, still ethical, still following like the protocol we should, but a very nuanced way about it. Yeah, well, I'm sort of like, look, I'm not Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Like, for sure. Like, I ain't no Dr. Phil. But I am not, I'm not into the like BS of you sitting around with me for, you know, 10 years. Unless you want to, unless like you need a safe space in the city to come and I'm a comfort, then absolutely. And I've had long-term patients that we just chill. Like, I have 2 couches in my office. I never had a chair and a couch. I never felt like I was in a position of power. I felt like just tap me for the information and the experience I have. That's it. Yeah, and like, if you want my advice, absolutely, I'll give it to you. Like, you're paying me a lot of money. I'll give you my clinical expertise on it. In this space, I haven't really yet. That's sort of the next phase. Will probably be having people come in. I have this like fantasy. Honestly, we should do this together. Okay. Because reaching the people we need to reach. Yeah. Right? We can't necessarily always do it through Facebook and Instagram, which we've talked about because they control so much of our audience and how much accessibility we get to our audience. That I have this like weird, crazy fantasy every single morning that I want to set up a table. Did you ever watch The Peanuts when you were a kid? Okay. Did you ever watch any of their like little movies? Like, you know, Lucy used to set up a table where she was like the psychiatrist, and it was like 5 cents. And Charlie Brown would come over.
If only therapy was 5 cents.
Oh well, I just felt like at a certain point, but at a certain point,
I get it though.
I totally want to like I have this idea of setting up a table in Times Square. Like a couch and a chair, so like a couple couches, and just having random people come up to me and be like, "This is my issue." Yeah. And I'd be like, your sister sounds like she's bipolar.
There you
like,
go.
or you need to go to a recovery program.
Yeah.
Or, I think you're cheating on your husband and you're not being honest about it with anybody. I would love to do that just for like a day to see what would happen to people's lives.
I think it also demystifies, is that the right word? That the whole idea of therapy. Like people think it's like, oh, you have to be nuts to go to therapy. And I'm like, no, we all come into life with things, or we all have families of origin that we come out of. And there's all sorts of things that just, and like you were saying, not about having people with you 10 and 20 years. And like, I think it's something that therapy can dip into your life, serve its purpose. Like you were saying, take my knowledge, learn from me, take these tools, and then go, grow, prosper, you know?
Well,
and then come back when you need to.
I think in some ways therapy has become much more accessible for people.
Yeah,
Although insurance plans are terrible and don't cover a lot of mental health treatment. But I think people don't have a lot of time to go to therapy.
There's a lot of online therapy as well now,
There's,
too.
thank God, because we needed the virtual therapy. Where for a while that was like totally shunned upon. Like they were like, no, don't do that. When I started, we couldn't text our clients back. Like you were taught, like, don't text your clients. And I remember like texting them being like, can you meet at 3?
That's
being
like
nervous about it. Crazy. It was
like
crazy.
bookkeeping, normal
it was
stuff.
so tense. Like to really practice the way you wanted to as a human being to fellow human being was like the most tense thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so, but this is what's really great about your feed again, is that there's just this ability to communicate the wellness information in a way that feels authoritative without feeling gimmicky or junky. And it's done in a really subtle, intelligent way. I have yet to master that. Like I am not there in my feed. Like and I'm very political too. Like you're not as political. I feel like in terms of like you keep your politics a little bit more.
Yes. Publicly, every once in a while. Like I sit with things.
Do you hold back because you don't want to be controversial or you don't want to piss off your following?
No, it's not an issue of that. Like they're not things that I'm afraid to say in that space. Yeah. It's just sometimes
like you just said you're pro-choice. So that's like one thing.
Yeah. Or like I've been commenting a lot on the stuff going on with like the assault and everything.
I know. So we're sitting here today doing this taping and the hearings are going on right now.
I actually did an interview last night, anonymously, but it was about, has this whole like situation been triggering for people that have been through sexual assault or sexual trauma? And I'm like, yes, but it's not triggering in the way Me Too was triggering. I think it's triggering in the way of like, it's bringing up this entire culture of like the whole boys will be boys culture, which is I think bigger and more problematic. It's like casual misogyny, right? It's like the day-to-day occurrences and comments and thought patterns that are actually problematic. Yes, they're not a full-scale hold somebody down and attack them, but they're still problematic. And it's like the mentality that's being brought up with the high school that he went to and like the fraternities he was involved in. And like I think that actually permeates a lot of men's like mentality,
consciousness,
but also a lot of women. Like it's a societal issue about like it's a whole, we'll have to shift the entire culture of how we think about women and how women can and can't be treated, even in very casual ways. So I think that that's why it's triggering, because it almost sets into place this kind of helplessness and hopelessness where it's like, wow, it's not just the big issues and the big things we're gonna have to think about, but like the way that you treat people on a day-to-day basis,
right?
You know,
right?
That's what's going to have to change, and it feels so daunting that it triggers like a helplessness or a hopelessness.
You know what I loved? I loved the idea when people switched it around and was like, okay, if you don't think this is that bad, then you turn around to your 19-year-old daughter, your 15-year-old daughter tonight before she goes out on a Friday night and be like, somebody might rape you, like. Shucks, right? Like it's okay, you know. Like go ahead, just like look at your own daughter and say like somebody might like try to stick their penis in your mouth tonight if you have a couple drinks and hold you down, like sort of like that's your rite of passage, you know, like that kind of happens to all of us. You know what was interesting too for me is that for when how do I say this? A lot of things have bothered me quite a bit about what's happened. I mean, I came out publicly during the election process and said, I don't know how any woman who has any self-respect could vote for Trump. And I still like, I said that on national television. Yeah. So for me, watching the election go down and seeing my phone blow up, I didn't get out of bed the next day. Yeah. I didn't know how anybody else was getting out of bed. And I'm actually not necessarily like, people see me as very liberal. I'm actually very independent.
Yeah.
Like if I could have a party, I believe in like I don't think the 2-party system's working anymore. I'm incredibly independent. So I fall sort of on the spectrum on certain issues. However, there was something, I don't know why, about the comment that if it was that bad, she would have reported it. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I feel even weird saying that because the straw should have been broken. It was on many levels. Like, you know, during certain times during this entire presidency, especially the children who were jailed for parents coming over. I mean, don't get me started. But that the other day, the amount of anger I felt over why we didn't report was so intense.
That was the moment for me as well. When I went on Twitter
Why
and
do you
saw the
think
hashtag.
that was?
I think it's the helplessness and the hopelessness again, because it's like the hashtag why I didn't report. I started kind of like, you know, clicking through it, and I thought, do I want to chime in? And I was like, maybe I don't. But it's also like the reasons I didn't report are the same reasons why you don't even want to bring it up now. Because you're like, I'm going to be blamed. There are going to be questions about what did you have on? Were you flirting? Were you drinking? Like the same questions about why women don't report in the first place are just going to actually be layered on even more. And I mean, we're seeing this with like the women who are speaking up about like they don't think she's valid. Some of the things that they are saying is like horrific. Like it's like female misogyny. Like it's so problematic. What did one of them say? She said, show me a 17-year-old boy who hasn't done that. I'll wait. And I was like,
well, the other thing too is that I think like, why didn't I report? It's also like, okay, which one?
Exactly. Same.
I was
like,
like,
I don't know where I'm going to start.
Like, I don't know, the guy who flashed me in McDonald's, or the guy who pulled down his pants while I was walking down 72nd Street, or what happened in college, like the big one, or the creepy like half uncle, like you know, like where do you even, like, you go back in your history as a woman, the guy who snuck into my friend's dorm room while I was dead asleep, and the next thing I know he's like feeling me up and on top of me, and he's a kid from my English class I've never seen before. Like, you know, there's all these like weird memories that I have of men behaving inappropriately. And I'm going to say something a little bit even more controversial here, just because we're going for it. I'm on Tucker Carlson's show quite a bit, and somebody has to be the light.
Okay, yes,
there.
Good. No, I agree. No, it's good. He needs a light on there. He needs someone to keep him on the subject matter.
You know, but
because it's not always
when Oprah
there.
was asked to comment on certain things, she said, I would only do that if I felt like people were going to listen. So sometimes I feel like I'm over there going like, what am I doing? Like no one's going to listen. But I get a lot of response back from people who are like, thank you for actually trying to make something a more nuanced debate. And you have to understand that television works in a way where you have just like 3 minutes to get a point across. So that's just the way it's built, especially programs like that. He said something, and HuffPo likes to slay him a lot. And they reported that he said, you know, women are part of the problem who don't report, because he the way they put it, he bashed women who don't report, because if they don't report, they're part of the problem, because then the perpetrator gets to do this again to somebody else. And as much as I was like pissed off at first read of that, that's the work again that we need. Like, thank God we're starting to create a safer space. As somebody who is a mandated reporter for the state, right? As a psychotherapist, you become a mandated reporter if you're licensed by the state, and I am. We must start encouraging women now, once this space gets to be more safe to report, because you don't want these guys out doing this over and over again and thinking it's appropriate, and re-victimizing and traumatizing and doing illegal acts to women.
I mean, the worst part about that is that the men who go on and continue to do this, they lead a totally normal life. They don't lose any sleep over this. And think about the aftermath of trauma. That
is,
women spend their whole lives trying to fix and put the pieces back together, and they're the ones who carry this. Like, I wrote a poem one time about some of the situations I've been in, and like, this person probably lived his whole life and doesn't even think about anything that he did to me or anybody else, possibly, right? Doesn't lose any sleep, doesn't change how he feels about himself. His relationships, you know, they probably suck, but that's a whole other problem or issue. But to think that like the women carry the burden of that.
It's, you know, the post I wrote about it was like, sit with one person who has been through this. The trajectory, the thing that changes so drastically in one moment. You're exactly right. The guy goes on with his life. The patients that I've treated in my office, and I've worked in 2 rape crisis centers. I've done tons of advocacy work around this area. It's why I got into the field on a large level to begin with. I started working at the Rape Crisis Center up at Barnard College when I was in graduate school for art. I felt so compelled to want to help women on campuses who were raped. But the trajectory of their lives changes so drastically for years. The job choices, the drinking, the numbing of pain, the relationships, the way they feel about their bodies, their sex lives, their relationships with family members who they don't disclose these things to because there's so much shame involved that they start to crack at the seams, right? Both the family relationships and themselves, their entire psyche, that damage for years. That then finally get into therapy and start talking about these things, and then you can start to rebuild a little bit, but it's really bad. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be like the biggest incident in the world. The amount of betrayal that someone feels, and it shifts your whole sense of what's right and what's wrong about the universe. Sort of like when you take a kid in for a shot. Like there's this like little innocent baby and you bring them into the pediatrician and you're like, hi Johnny, see, this isn't going to be that bad. And the next thing they're like stabbed with a needle. Your heart breaks because it's that moment of recognition, like this isn't a safe space anymore for me.
Like it's when so many when so many of their experiences, even as women, start to get kind of colored with fear in a way. Like catcalling is like on another level, like for me or people who've been through trauma, because you're like, I don't feel safe, you know. So something that other people could just brush off is no longer brush offable, you know, because it like they all start piling up. It's like the whole concept of like microaggressions. I think they just start adding up.
Microaggressions, yeah.
They just start adding up.
I like that. But that's the thing, like I again, like going back to the Instagram and body image and what we decide to put out there and what we don't. If I don't show up at a place like Fox, then because I get death threats if I say certain things on television, which happens, like we've had to like rewire the house and do all this kind of stuff.
Why are people so nasty?
Do they win?
Do
they win? Do I stop? Do I get scared and say like, okay, I'm going to back off? And I'm not going to be like a sexual being at all, maybe on Instagram, right? I'm going to like hide my sexuality, which is like it's not easy, right? Do I let them win? Or do you say like, no, I'm going to be out there and I'm going to keep fighting?
I mean, I think there's just a nuanced way to go about it, because also if you go too far the other extreme, it also can look wildly like self-objectifying in a way, and then it also
tell me
falls
what you mean
back
by
into
that.
like the male gaze, like if nothing I did but was, and it's also because it's like the easiest way on a platform that's built solely on visual representation, right? It's kind of the easiest way to get attention, right? Because nudity, as empowering as it might be in certain circles, it also is, it's how do we say this? Like it's kind of gimmicky in a sense, because we know it's going to garner attention. Like nudity always, especially in American culture, always garners attention. Like sex sells, right? But for both reasons, you know. So I think that it's like there's a way to do it that feels like authentic and honest and truly empowered. That's not just how extreme can I get with this? You know, how extreme can I be?
It's so funny
just
though, because as you're saying it, like. On the other hand, I wish we lived in a place where you could just post whatever you want and feel free. Like if I'm in a bikini today, or I'm like doing this or I'm doing that, and it might be a little bit revealing, like your last post you had a sports bra on, and like the way that the angle was, it was, to me it's like a gorgeous shot of the female body.
Pretty.
But for somebody else it might be provocative. Right? And so it's like, I just wish we lived, I know, we're talking about like sunshine and rainbows. We just don't. Let's go, because we're staying heavy here. I want to go to one more like heavy thing. Eating disorders. What do you think is, because because people are going to be listening, what do you think is the cause of the eating disorders?
Oh man,
it's multifaceted, but I have sort of a
multifaceted.
different take on this a little bit.
Okay, shoot.
And you might agree with me.
Okay.
So I actually have never had an eating disorder, even though I've worked with hundreds of patients who have had eating disorders. One of the things that I think gets missed in the eating disorder world a lot is the OCD component of eating disorders. And it's just a really vicious cycle. So when you're not giving your body enough nutrients, you're not thinking very clearly. So you start to become really obsessive compulsive about what you're eating. So I'm talking about like anorexia and bulimia.
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, they're like impulse disorders.
They're like,
and like your impulse control is like something is off.
Yeah, well, and I hate to say eating disorders. I love to say disordered eating.
I mean, that's almost all diet culture, though.
Right, totally. But I think with like the women I've seen, and I've come up to sort of to the edge of an eating disorder once when I lived with 12 women in college.
Yeah.
And because everyone was trying to lose their freshman 15, I was working at a dude ranch in Southwest Colorado. We were living in a cabin, and like everybody had felt like they had gained too much weight in their freshman year, and it got kind of weird. Like everybody was like counting calories, and I had never done that before because I was always an athlete. So I was hungry. Like I couldn't perform at the rate I needed to perform if I didn't eat. So that's one thing that held me back from having an eating disorder, which I know women can easily go the other way. I also just don't tend to be really obsessive compulsive. I've got other issues, but that's not one of them. And so the women I see who are predisposed to be OCD, and then you add in food, and then you add in poor nutrition because they're not taking enough calories and enough water.
Yeah, for sure.
Like hydration's massive. They start falling into this really dark hole of this vicious cycle of starving themselves or throwing up compulsively. So that's sort of where I wish the treatment was a little bit more than necessarily focused on all the imagery that we see around us.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the eating disorder is about the ritual and the obsessiveness and numbers and sizes and shapes, and like there becomes this really like I said, it's like ritual, these obsessive things that you start to do over and over and over. And
you start to go into this world of really sort of dysmorphic thinking, right? So like nothing, because you're clouded. I really believe because the brain just isn't being
it's not nourished. Yeah,
you're malnourished. You're looking in the mirror, and what you see is not what the rest of the world sees, right? You see I'm fat. The rest of the world sees like you're 100 pounds, like you're in a major struggle here. So I think that's part of it. And then again, you have the cases obviously where somebody comes in, and I was always like a size 8 or 10 in high school and college. I got smaller after I had kids actually, just because I think I lost that sort of baby fat that helped me have babies that like naturally kind of needs to be there. But I think if you're sort of on the bigger scale, obviously that's always harder for girls who are trying to compete with girls that they think, especially like in a place like New York or LA, where they think thinner's, going to be more power.
Or even social media, because it's not just about thinness, it's about what is an attractive and desirable body. So that's, I have my issues with the body positivity movement.
Because you're in the body positivity
technically
movement.
Yes, but I'm like not super
psyched about it.
Well, I just think it's been taken away from the people it was originally meant for, because there's like a lot of fat phobia, and like culture just basically says you cannot be big, you cannot be a big person. Well, culture being the American society, that the idea is that thin, smaller, and if not thin or smaller, now it's, are you curvy? Because curvy is good, but like if you have a belly, it's bad.
Right.
So it's still. My problem with the whole thing is that our value is still on something external. It's still in that women, it doesn't matter what your body looks like, but your body is what's valuable. That's problematic to me. And even when years ago in this whole, when it kind of got big on Instagram, I had people that were like, why don't you start kind of like a hashtag or a movement around it? And I said, I'm just tired of the obsession. Like, can we just stop the obsession with our bodies? Because even if you're in the movement as like, man, I love my body, every photo I post is my body, you're still obsessed with your body.
Right.
Like the obsession is in we're still talking about
not
bodies.
The internal self, like the external self.
Can we stop talking about
the
bodies?
Yeah.
They're just bodies. Like they're really just bodies.
Right. Well, then we get into this like whole spiritual conversation too.
Yeah, right.
That's gonna lead
this
me
is
down
my sporty model. A body's just a sporty model to carry you around.
Right.
But yeah, so what do I think is behind them? I think, my eating disorder was never about food or a body. It was about, there was depression, there was anxiety, there was family-related issues where I just felt like I had no control. And it was the one thing I guess I could control and obsess over. And I knew I was sick. Like that was the thing. It wasn't like me thinking, oh, please don't take my disorder from me. It was like a cry for help.
Right.
And I had planned this whole like wellness group of people where I was like, I'm gonna find somebody who knows about nutrition, and I'm gonna find like a trainer, and I'm gonna find like I'm gonna go to yoga. And of course this doesn't work because like I did not have the tools as like a 16-year-old to really fix my eating disorder. I ended up getting put in an inpatient treatment facility. Yeah, but it was amazing because the minute I went, I felt like I could exhale. Because mine was about like control and perfectionism,
right, so you were
and
like, okay,
type, all AP classes, president of every club, like just nerdy kid on 1,000, but like at an extreme level.
So you could get there and you could just say, okay, you guys take over and tell me what to do.
Yeah, it was like, I don't have responsibility anymore. I have 2 outfits because I was told I was going away for a weekend and it was like 50 something days, but I have 2 outfits. I can't even wear different clothes. Like I have no choices anymore.
So you had a good experience there.
Yes,
as good as one would have in an inpatient
I mean, it
program.
saved my life, so that was good and positive. But other than that, I think was just taking off the like responsibility. You know, I mean, complete parent-child, like, you know, that whole vibe.
Yeah.
And so it was able to just kind of, like I said, exhale and say, oh, I don't have to think about this stuff anymore.
When you came back out, was it a struggle afterwards, or were you able to?
No.
It was sort of done with.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, I'm going to put that part of my life behind me, and now.
Yeah.
She showed up with her McDonald's. Her McDonald's iced tea for $1. So McDonald's, if you're watching,
it's $1.09. Okay, I'm very impressed with this.
Yes, she's like and I'm drinking my Stop and Shop.
Well, I get so mad that I want iced tea, like black tea. That's iced tea.
Yeah, you're Southern girl.
Yeah, I don't want some like spearmint green, white, raspberry flavor.
Right,
and I want it
like
to be
bougie iced tea.
Yeah, I want it to be in
like,
a huge cup.
Right, cold.
Yes, a lot of ice. And I want it to not cost $5. So there you go.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
So what do you have coming up? Like, what's in the future for you, Claire?
Oh, man.
Besides coming back here and talking to me whenever you want to about any psychological issue. Or I'm going to drag you into 42nd Street, onto 42nd Street with me with the couch and be like, we're going to do some work today with people.
Oh, man, that's happy. I loved it. That would be really fun.
You know what would be so fun? I just love to connect with random people.
Come, right?
And you know what? One encounter, I'm really a huge believer that one encounter can completely change your life.
It really can, which is why I think social media, as much as, I mean, you were mentioning earlier how it's like so hard as someone who's like in the academic world, psychotherapy world, to get on it. It's the only place where I see like the positive caveat is when you get stories from like women or girls or anybody, even guys who were like, man, I went to therapy, or I started yoga and I feel so much better.
Right.
You know, it's that like if one moment, one post, one caption can change their perspective of like the wellness industry, can change their perspective of like, I mean, hey, the treatment of women, just anything that you're like, was that the tipping point for you that is making your life now better? That's where I think the beauty in it lies.
Well, and I think where you're going to start to feel as you go further down the path of your education, and I, again, like have a lot of clinical experience, and sometimes I sit on it. Like I feel like I'm sitting on my clinical experience and I'm not sharing it because, again, it's not, even though I'm out there and I can interview and I also have a master's in journalism essentially, right?
Yes.
So I can do all of this to actually impart advice. I don't know why. It's like so weird for me, even though it's like what I got paid to do and how I made a living for over a decade and supported my family and all that kind of stuff. It's what people want from me. And I feel like I like sit on it. I don't know why. It's just like a weird conversation.
I get it. Sometimes there's so much of it, it's hard to even go, what snippet, what takeaway am I going to share?
Well, and it just feels like it's just so prevalent now. Like if you scroll through, like everyone's giving advice. So like, do I say like, actually there's like some credible advice out there that I trust more than others, but then I don't want to put myself above other people because I'm not really like that.
No.
So basically it's just going to be a matter of people knowing that they can come to me and ask me questions.
For sure.
Like that's it. Like I'm available.
Yeah.
Like I want people to just know that they can ask me questions because people have them.
Yeah.
And to know that I'm not going to judge them and that I can give out advice that actually comes from like a medical, clinical, and personal perspective.
Yeah.
So
maybe we do our couches.
I think we should do our couches.
Do some couches.
I just
come hang out with us.
Come hang out. I could get my video guy to do it.
It'd be fun.
Wouldn't it? We like let people know we're there and they can like come by and meet us and be like, what's up?
And chat for a little bit.
And you know what it is? It's the sharing of those stories where then people go, God, I'm not the only one. They're having people publish their unsent love letters.
Oh, yeah.
Just even that exercise alone, because the longing and desire we feel for people we've loved and we've never been able to voice it, to know that there are other people out
Mm-hmm.
there, that's so moving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point, is to let people know that they're not alone. That's because I'm so into connection.
That is exactly what I told people when they used to ask me what was my goal and my purpose. I said, it's to tell people they're not alone. And they're like, but you teach yoga. And I'm like, okay, you're missing the point.
I know.
I will get my pitch better at some
I
point. But
know.
like, that's the strongest currency in the world, I think, is if you can make people feel like they're not alone or help them feel like they're not alone.
Well, also when you stop, and this gets into a much bigger spiritual conversation, when you stop seeing separateness.
Mm-hmm.
So like, again, this is going to get very woo-woo, but like, I know you're in a separate body than me, but I'm at the spiritual place now where like, we're all part of the same body. We're all part of the same astral body. So we're all part of the same diamond.
Mm-hmm.
You're just a different facet of that diamond. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to love, right? I'm talking to source. I'm talking to God.
Yeah.
And so there is no difference between you and I. So I would never treat you badly because I would never treat myself badly. I would never treat God badly.
Yeah.
And God not being like the patriarchal man. I don't see him that way. It's source, it's energy, it's light.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gone down that road.
No, I agree. I mean, shit. I mean, you don't stay in the yoga and the meditation space without falling down that road as well.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot
And
of
wait
that.
till you sit with people's pain for like 20,000 hours. It's ministry.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting in the soul of people. They're sitting with them, and
Well, what
that
is that
changes
saying?
you.
There's that saying, suffering is religious if you do it right, which is almost like it's your.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad because there's a difference between suffering and sacrifice.
Yeah.
But I think it's in the sense of like,
Well, the gateway to enlightenment is through grief.
there you go.
Yes.
We've got all the one-liners. This
We
is great.
do. Girl, come
Yes,
bring it
yes.
in. Bring it in. Two girls with glasses killed it.
With one-liners.
So I gotta get off there. They're gonna be like, we have to go. Can we like get the room back? You're amazing. Thank you so much, Claire, for coming on.
All right. I mean, we've got plenty more to talk about.
Plenty more. You're coming back, right?
will.
You'll
For
come
sure.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.